Alright, so I'm pretty sure a lot of you have heard common sense is not that common nowadays, but I'm gonna explain to you why I think that's true. But first I'm gonna tell you my quote, which is, common sense is the most evenly distributed quantity in the world. Everyone thinks he has enough. So I believe that this is true. Everyone does have common sense. I'm gonna give you an example why, and then I'm also gonna tell you why people do think that they already have enough common sense. So first of all, my first example is gonna be with driving, that's basically what I'm gonna talk about right now is driving. So first, it's when you start off as driving. I don't know if you guys remember when you were about 15 and a half years old, but you were nervous to start taking the test, or you were nervous to start driving, so you're like in the seat, like scared, shaken, but you use your common sense to learn how to drive. So with driving, or starting out as driving, even though you were scared or nervous, that's how you learned how to drive, is by using common sense and learning from other people like your parents on how to drive. And then my next example is people, once they figure out common sense or how to do something, they start to get really comfortable. So they start to get overconfident. And then with driving, once you start driving for a long time, then it's like, oh, I could do this, like one hand, music, texting. People, they're just like, that's how they get into accidents when once they become overconfident. So with driving as well, if you have too much, that's when people, they're like, oh yeah, I could do this, overconfident, so they think they have too much common sense. And then the third thing I'm gonna talk about is pulling over for directions. Some people, they're really, they're too cocky, or they have issues, like males, about their self-esteem. So a lot of guys are too, overconfident, like, oh, I know where we're going, like, I don't need to pull over for directions. But then it's like they're lost, but they have this overconfidence. They're like, I think that I'll be able to find the way, even though a lot of times they really can't, and it takes them twice as long to get to their destination. But you just have to choose whether or not you want to believe if you have enough common sense. Because people, if they think that, maybe they do have good common sense, but they don't want to admit that they're wrong. So it might be better to pull over for directions, and you'll be able to find your way a lot faster, rather than thinking that you're too good to pull over and ask for directions. But I think that everyone does contain common sense. I think that people should just choose to have more, let's say, how should I say that? I think that people should try to figure out whether or not their common sense is good enough, or if it's not, they should just ask for help. The end.
That's good. That's good. That's really good for just not knowing what to think about. Hush Didn't you just cross out? Yeah, you crossed out. A name for you, read that one. But you still gotta do the self-eval.
All right. I think you started off with a pretty good idea, and you made the point with the thesis. That's okay. It sounds interesting that you're going to use driving as the analysis or comparison for the whole speech. That's okay also. It does mean, though, that the structure needs to be a little bit more distinct, and I think sometimes the examples, because they are all about driving, are going to sort of run together, and that's why I think a preview would help a little bit more. It may just be that you didn't have those ideas set up ahead of time, and so you had to wait for them to come to you while you were speaking, and that's why there isn't really a little bit more of a preview other than just what the subject area was going to be. The presentation issues, your voice projects pretty well. I do think that there's variety in your voice, but I do think sometimes that there's not as much emphasis on some ideas and concepts as there could be. You could occasionally use a little bit of a pause or a change in volume to make what you're talking about seem more dramatic or interesting, or to make a transition. It's not that anything was problematic. I'm just, again, looking at things that would make your presentation more effective than it was, instead of being, so it's very fluent as you're speaking, but it does need, I think, a little bit of a kick once in a while, and it never feels like it kicks in and drives up our interest a little bit. Your gestures, you had some good indicators, and you had lots of descriptive gestures. It looked like you were very involved in the speech there. Your facial expressions are fine. I think that you look quite animated when you're speaking, and you have excellent audience contact, so you're doing good there. You did seem like you were a little bit anxious because you stood in the one spot most of the time. When you got to the third point, you relaxed a little bit. You took a kind of a step back. I thought, okay, she's going to kind of change her focus there, and then you went right back to the same spot that you were in, and it just feels like you were, that's where your anxiety is. If I stand in the one spot, like we talked about before, the T-Rex can't see me if I don't move, that sort of thing. That's the one place where I thought maybe there's some anxiety coming out. You got to work on something better than the end as your exit line. Thank you.